Hi, I'm Anita Barbee, and I'm a professor at the Kent School of Social Work at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. And I'm out here in California visiting the University of California, Davis, doing some work with the California folks here on the CQI process. And we've had a little conference, and I've been a part of that. And what I talked about was emphasizing the importance of using CQI in regards to the workforce. The main point that we want to take away here today is the fact that many of you are already using a CQI process to understand your practice with families and children to reach better outcomes. And what we would argue that you need to begin to do now is use that same CQI process of plan, do, study, and act with your workforce to begin to isolate questions around why you think your workforce might be leaving, when does it happen, at what phase in the work cycle, is there something about how you're recruiting or selecting or treating employees that might be contributing to their leaving your agency. It's very important to ask those questions in a very systematic way, just like you do in your CQI process, where you very carefully come up with research questions, trying to understand when in the cycle of the workforce time people leave. Is it right when they come in the agency? Is it a year later, 2 years later? Is it your more seasoned workers? Is it just the turnover as a result of retirement? So you need to understand that process, ask those kinds of questions. You need to measure turnover very carefully and make sure your formula is the most complex and up-to-date in the field. And you need to also ask other kinds of questions around what's going on in the context of your agency that might be contributing and getting some sense of those things rather than just looking at the employee themselves or the timing of when in the cycle this happens. So if you can plan very carefully and do a thorough assessment and maybe even a root cause analysis of what exactly do you think is really leading to your turnover, then you can begin to look at interventions. And what we would really propose that you do is only try one intervention at a time so that you can see how much that intervention is impacting your turnover rate. If you try too many things at once, you never know which one worked. And so it would really help if you could just isolate one thing at a time, give it a little time to see how much it's working. It usually takes 6 months to a year for you to be able to tell if your turnover rates are shifting because they fluctuate over the course of a year, and that's very normal. But if you can kind of take a 6-month or a year block and look to see how a particular intervention works, then you're more likely to get that the outcome data that you need to be able to see if you should continue that new process or if you should need to try something else. And then, building in that evaluation piece is always important. So again, it gives you the feedback and that you can then also share with the rest of your colleagues in California and across the nation, because there's just not a lot of research on what works and what doesn't in terms of turnover and child welfare. And so any data that you can give or evidence that you can build and share with others will really be helpful in this whole quest for trying to manage our workforces better in child welfare. The other thing that would be really helpful is if you could kind of link that data of turnover to outcomes. If there's a way to find a common field or way to match worker data with outcome data, then we can begin to see, is it the number of workers that a case has or the kinds of work that they're doing or when they leave in a case that matters for outcomes, because those questions haven't been answered yet in the literature. So that would be really helpful. And then finally, once you get all that information and you've gleaned, this worked or this didn't, then you can either do more of that or you can try something new. We're building a database of evidence of what works through the Quality Improvement Center for Workforce Development out of the University of Nebraska, University of Louisville, where I am. We're one of the partners in that effort with leading the evaluation. And so soon, about 2 years, we'll know if these 8 interventions have worked. We're looking at reducing stress and trauma in the workforce to try to manage the secondary trauma that's happening as a result of the work. We're looking at use of technology to see if that has an impact on people's flexibility and when and where and how they do work, and if that reduces the stress of the job. We're looking at a job redesign in a particular state to see if that makes a difference. So we're trying out different things to see what might improve that retention rate as well as outcomes for children. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll be able to share more with you in the future.